Hi, I finally got round to watching the last film that I recorded before the lockdown last year. My hard disk, I set it to record 2 days before I went off to stay on the coast. Finally got back a couple of days ago and edited to trim out the adverts and actually sat down and watched it last night. And it's 1981's Neighbours, probably best known for being John Belushi's last film, teaming him again with Dan Aykroyd in a film from John Avildsen, the director of Rocky. It's based on a novel published a year earlier and is the oddly Kafkaesque suburban story of a man driven to the edge of madness by his new neighbours over the course of a single evening. Earl Keyes is a very sensible, serious, straightforward, button down type who lives at the end of a lane with a single house next door. And when the new neighbours move in, the brash, effrontery based Vic and his seductive wife Ramona, Earl doesn't really know what to do. He's sure that they're doing something, they're plotting against him, they're exploiting him in some way, but he can't prove this to his disbelieving wife. And the battle of wills between the two gets increasingly fraught. There's also a very interesting sub thread, which is that Earl acknowledges that this is the most alive he's felt in years, that this conflict has shaken him out of his long term ennui. And it leads then to a very strange, unusual ending where, with the house next door burnt down by the following day, Earl decides to join Vic and Ramona on their next adventure doing God knows what, and leaves behind his own house burning to the ground, uh, with his wife and daughter later to come home to find him gone and their house a smoking ruin. The problem with it, unfortunately, is that Avildsen has absolutely no sense of comedy of any kind. The director of Rocky is not someone one would expect to have much in the way of comic skill. But the music is terrible. Originally, the film had a more serious, dramatic score to underline the comic shenanigans, but it changed in favour of a score by Bill Conti, who previously scored Rocky, which has lots of zany elements and crazy Looney Tunes sound effects added onto the soundtrack. Um, the decision was also taken early in production for Aykroyd and Belushi to switch roles. So Belushi, who was typically the party animal type as seen in National Lampoon's Animal House, plays the much more serious, quiet, button-down type, whereas the more reserved, laconic Aykroyd plays the outgoing, zany Vic. I think this actually works extremely well. It shows Belushi's range as a performer, that he's able to play this very buttoned down, as I say, serious, sober character. And Aykroyd, as we've seen in other films, can play over enthusiastic and exuberant extremely well. There's an interesting choice of him having dyed blonde hair and also uh, blue contact lenses that make his eyes look permanently dilated. So there are close ups of him which are extremely unnerving. It almost looks like he's been overdoing the spice. Um, it, it's a shame because it has a potential to be a really entertaining, interesting film of this sort of odd character study of these two characters combined with this kind of battle of wills in this suburban cul-de-sac, which weirdly we never actually leave the cul-de-sac, just these two houses at the end of a road. We never see any other houses, and I think there's only one brief scene set anywhere else in the end of a phone line. Um, and the original novel apparently is much darker and more blackly satirical in tone. Avildsen's direction, and that both Belushi and Aykroyd tried to get rid of him, either directing the picture themselves or getting John Landis, who they'd worked with so successfully in the past. He has such a tin ear for comedy that, in his hands, promising material winds up extremely leaden. You can see the potential for a great comedy there, but unfortunately it's missing. And with this being Belushi's last film, he died 4 months after the film's release. It's a spectre of what could have been.